Craig is a guy who just wants to retire and escape responsibilities, but by accident, he ends up becoming the leader of a clan of super powerful hunters. Even though he's ordinary and has no idea what he's doing, everyone thinks he's a genius. Now, he tries to survive dangerous missions while pretending to be the amazing leader everyone believes him to be. Craig is the revered leader of the world's most powerful clan, the Grieving Soul, and his wisdom and strength have made him a living legend. However, behind this glorious facade hides a man who, at his core, is weak and consumed by a desperate desire to escape his responsibilities. All Craig wants is to abandon this role that drains him, but unfortunately, his fate seems sealed. Today, we see Craig standing in line at a treasure hunter gathering, and it's clear he doesn't want to be there. His weary expression leaves no doubt. The last thing he wants is to participate in this charade. But he's trapped, with no other choice. Treasure hunters are the stars of this world, revered as heroes for risking their lives in vaults filled with riches, facing ghosts and unspeakable threats, all without even the comfort of health insurance. It's a dangerous and thankless occupation. But the promise of fame and fortune entices dozens of hopefuls every year. They flock to join clans like the renowned First Steps, known in the capital as one of the best ever. This clan is a coalition of groups helping each other, bound by survival. And that's why so many people are here today. Unless you're a prodigy like Jin Woo, it's impossible to advance much as a solo hunter. Craig, as usual, tries to blend into the shadows, hoping everything will end quickly. However, his attempt to disappear among the others is interrupted when a soft voice behind him calls out. A young woman asks if he's also there to join a group. Craig, his patience worn thin, resorts to the old tactic of ignoring the speaker, hoping she'll get tired and leave. But before he knows it, she's already standing in front of him, a gentle smile on her face.
My name is Ruda,
she says, extending her hand in greeting. Craig, with a disinterested nod, murmurs his name, refusing to shake her offered hand. Ruda's smile falters briefly, but she recovers and starts talking nonstop. Ruda, a level 3 hunter, shares that she had been hunting alone until she encountered a vault called the White Wolf's Denver. Unable to face it alone, she's now looking to join a group. At that moment, the man ahead of them turns around and, in a condescending tone, tells Ruda she's crazy for attempting such a dangerous vault while still only a level 3 novice. He laughs, calling her an inexperienced amateur. Ruda, suddenly furious, bites her lip, her eyes blazing with anger. And at that moment, Craig deeply regrets not staying home. The metallic flash of Ruda's knives gleams for an instant, and she's about to strike the man. The air between them becomes thick, the tension unbearable. But before the situation gets out of hand, a guard approaches, reprimanding Ruda. He reminds her that they're not in the dark alleys of London, and if she continues, she'll be banned from the clan meeting. With a heavy sigh, Ruda puts her weapons away and apologizes, visibly frustrated. Craig, once again, tries to fade into the crowd, wishing to disappear. When they finally make it into the meeting, Craig can't seem to shake off Ruda. She, dazzled by the strength and prestige of the other hunters, looks like a child in front of a whole new world. Have you been here before? She asks, a bit anxious. Craig, with little emotion, responds that this is the 5th time he's attended this meeting. Ruda looks at him with a mixture of pity and disapproval. You must be a terrible hunter if you have to keep coming back here, she thinks, but doesn't dare say out loud. Among hunters, talent is everything. Even the most anonymous can, with determination and skill, rise to the top. As they observe the room, Ruda notices a group on the other side, their opulent outfits standing out from the rest. Who are they? She asks. Craig explains that they are the Ark Brave group, the most powerful one recruiting today. They're a legend, having conquered a level 7 vault with only 6 members. Being recruited by Ark Roden, their leader, is practically a guarantee of success in a hunter's career. Ruda, fascinated, continues to take in everything around her until she notices an empty table in the corner. She barely has time to ask about it before the man from earlier, the one who insulted her, reappears, offering to explain. Reluctantly, Ruta listens as he tells the story of the table, belonging to the group that founded the clan, the Griers, also known as the Grieving Souls. What no one knows, however, is that the legendary Grieving Souls are Craig's childhood friends. Rumors indicated they would be recruiting today, but the absence of the team suggests the rumors were false. At that moment, a young man who came to sign up for the Grieving Souls group realizes they haven't arrived yet. Arrogantly, he becomes furious, claiming he will become the strongest hunter in the world, and no other group is worth his time. Craig watches with a slight smile, finding the scene somewhat comical, while Ruta feels intimidated. The boy, after all, is a higher level than she is. The situation would escalate into a confrontation, but then a girl named Tino intervenes, determined to silence the boy with violence. For her, it's unacceptable that someone inferior dares to dream of joining the Grieving Souls. The tension in the room rises. Tino is ready to strike, and for a moment, it seems the fight will be avoided. However, Craig's provocation lights the fuse, and suddenly everyone in the room is encouraging the confrontation. Tino and the boy prepare to fight, the air boiling with imminent chaos. Craig, sensing things are about to get out of control, asks Ruta to follow him outside. But before they can leave, Tino senses a familiar presence. Her face changes instantly, and she rushes toward Craig. "Master," she exclaims, nervously asking if he saw her slip up. Craig, surprised, steps back as Ark Roden, the legendary leader of Ark Brave, approaches to greet him. Finally, the truth is revealed. Craig, the reluctant one, the weakling trying to escape attention, is the master of the Grieving Souls clan, and no one could have imagined. The impact of this revelation shocks everyone around. Now, all eyes are on him, and the weight of responsibility suffocates him once again. Craig, fighting back panic, wants only one thing: to leave, far away from it all. When Craig and his friends arrived in the capital, they were clearing out all the beginner vaults in record time. However, there was a problem. Craig had no idea what he was doing. On one of these occasions, he was saved from being devoured by a monster, but his teammates thought he had purposely let his guard down to act as bait. With no other choice, Craig went along with the story, but in reality, he was about to be eaten. They all shared the same dream, to become exceptional hunters. But unlike the other five, Craig was painfully ordinary. He knew that sooner or later, he would become a burden to the group, and he didn't want his friends to despise him for his weakness. So, he made a difficult decision: he would leave the group on his own. However, when he tried to resign, things took an unexpected turn, and he ended up being named team leader. That's how he assumed his current position as leader of his incredibly talented childhood friends. But deep down, he just wished he could retire from the life of a hunter. Ruta and Greg still couldn't believe they had been talking to the clan master the whole time. As Craig sat in his chair, Ark approached and asked if he had arrived late on purpose to observe the crowd as if he were one of the commoners. Craig denied it, explaining that he had simply overslept. But Ark, as usual, wasn't listening, firmly convinced that Craig had arrived late on purpose. No matter how much Craig tried to explain, people always interpreted him in a way that made him seem better than he actually was. Kay, on the other hand, didn't like the closeness between Ark and Craig at all and wanted to kick him out of the clan. But Craig wasn't willing to do that. Tino, a level 4 hunter, was an apprentice of one of Craig's childhood friends, Liz, and thus spent a lot of time around him. Ark asked Craig if he had any good candidates in mind for recruitment, but honestly, there was no need for new members in the clan at the moment. However, since Ark rarely recruited new members, Craig seized the opportunity and asked if Ark would seriously consider any recommendation he made. Ark responded that he would accept anyone chosen by Craig, which surprised everyone. The vice captain tried to dissuade him from such a hasty decision, but Ark interrupted, stating that anyone chosen by Craig would be worthy of joining his group. Tino started to blush, thinking Ark was considering recommending her, but she didn't like him much and was torn between accepting or not. Suddenly, the boy from earlier, whose name was Gilbert, stepped forward from the crowd, ready to beg if necessary to be accepted by Craig. Craig tried to think if Gilbert would be a good choice, but quickly gave up since he was terrible at judging people's character. Not knowing if someone would be strong in the future, Craig decided to let fate decide. He told Gilbert that he was willing to recommend him, but there was one condition. As a hunter, the most important thing is to ensure you always win. If he lacked strength, he would endanger the lives of his companions. So, Craig wanted him to demonstrate his ability to always win. Craig then removed one of his magic rings and announced to all the hunters present that the first person to present the ring to Ark would be accepted into his group. With that, he threw the ring into the crowd, awaiting the chaos. Gilbert was the first to grab the ring, but that didn't last long, as Tino leaped on him, hitting him so hard he was sent to the other side of the room. Gilbert probably needed a doctor, but no one was focused on him as the ring rolled across the floor. Initially, everyone hesitated, but soon they began to fight for it. At this point, Craig decided to leave. And even though the bar was being destroyed, he walked out, muttering that it wasn't his problem, and went home. However, the next morning, it became his problem. The fight in the bar made front-page headlines, and apparently, the entire place was destroyed because of the brawl, though fortunately, there were no civilian casualties. In the end, Eva informed him that the Explorers Association wanted a private meeting with him, and Craig already knew what that meant. They were going to scold him. He asked how Ark reacted to the news, and Eva told him that Ark took it well and even laughed about the situation. With Ark not being angry, Craig wanted to take advantage of his good mood to send him the bill for the bar's reconstruction, as well as ask him to handle the association's meeting. But Eva informed him that the meeting was specifically for him, so there was no way to avoid it this time. Even if he tried to ignore it, the association's manager, Gar, would come after him, as he always did. So, Craig gave in and agreed to attend the meeting, but he planned to use his secret weapon, begging and apologizing. He argued that the only damage was to the bar, and since no one was hurt and the bar owner had been compensated, there shouldn't be any more issues. Gar didn't even have a chance to yell at Craig, as upon seeing him apologize, he decided to let the matter go for now. However, even without official complaints against him, Craig still needed to take responsibility for his actions. That's when Gar assigned him a mission, without giving him the right to refuse. The association receives all kinds of missions for hunters, but with the large volume, some are so difficult or pay so little that no one wants to take them. These missions are known as chores, and Craig really didn't want to deal with one of those. He tried to pretend he was too important to be assigned such a mundane task, but Gar didn't let him escape this time, forcing him to choose. Craig opened the mission book and began searching for the easiest one. Among all those available, the lowest level was 3, so he chose that one. He planned to pass the job to Ark, but when he went to look for him, he was informed by Tino that Ark was in a meeting with some nobles and would be away for a while. With few options left to get rid of the job, Craig noticed that Tino was wearing his ring, meaning she had won the game the day before. Setting that aside, he asked if she was free at the moment. Tino, excited, thought he was going to ask her out, but to her disappointment, Craig said he had a mission for her. She immediately ran off, but even though she was fast, Craig had his methods. He summoned his chain hound, Silver, and ordered it to capture Tino. It didn't take long before she was tied to a chair as Craig explained the mission. Tino felt betrayed, as she had just wanted to go on a date with Craig, but now he was forcing her to take on a terrible mission alone. Craig asked if the problem was that she didn't want to do the mission alone, and Tino responded that she wouldn't mind if Craig went with her. However, that would mean Craig would have to do real work, so he opted to send Tino with a group of hunters he had met the day before. 6 years ago, when Craig's group first arrived in the capital, they were ready to join the guild and register as hunters. But when they reached the door, Craig began to have doubts. Luke, ever confident, told him to stop worrying since it was Craig himself who suggested they should be the best in the capital. The problem was that Craig wasn't doubting Luke's strength, he knew he would end up dragging the whole group down. Luke, however, ignored these concerns, pushed open the guild doors with confidence, and declared himself the strongest swordsman in the world. Shortly after, Liz followed suit, proclaiming herself the strongest thief in the world. After such a grand entrance, there was no turning back. Craig approached the reception to register the group, but secretly wished they had regretted choosing him as their leader. When it came time to name the group, Craig, without thinking much, chose something dark, soul lamenting. The others found the name a bit heavy and melancholic, but when Craig tried to use his terrible taste in names as an excuse to step down as leader, everyone changed their minds and said they loved the name. Now, in the present, Craig calls a meeting with the people he wants to delegate his work to. Greg, incredulous, still can't accept that Craig is the leader of the famous guild Soul Lamenting. And even harder to believe, Craig is the infamous Thousand Tricks, a legend in the guild. When a hunter reaches a certain level of accomplishments, they earn a special title and become practically a celebrity. Craig's title ended up being Thousand Tricks, but Gilbert refuses to believe he is that strong, especially since Craig never seems to train. Tino, ever loyal, defends Craig, saying Gilbert is weak for not understanding Craig's power. Craig, unsure what power she's talking about, simply accepts the undeserved praise. In any case, Craig asks if they will accept the job, but Gilbert refuses, still not believing Craig is the strongest in the city. Greg tries to get Gilbert to stop talking, fearing what might happen if they irritated the most powerful person in the capital. But Gilbert doesn't care and pokes Greg in the nose. Seeing that Gilbert won't cooperate, Craig simply gives up on convincing him and turns to Greg, who promptly accepts the request. The last one to be consulted is Ruta. Since the mission involves the Wolf Den, Craig thinks it would be perfect for her, who already wanted to clean the place out. Although she's not exactly excited about the team, Ruta agrees to go. Satisfied, Craig tells Tino that if she needs more help, she can ask someone from the guild. Tino, however, begs Craig to join the team, but he firmly refuses. With that settled, Craig turns to leave, but Gilbert, irritated at being ignored, challenges Craig to a duel. If he loses, he agrees to join the team. Craig hates being challenged, so he finds a simple solution. He accepts the duel but puts Tino in his place. Furious at Gilbert's disrespect toward her master, Tino accepts the challenge. Moreover, she sees it as a chance to impress Craig, already thinking about how her pose would look perfect with good camera angles. Gilbert, who had been beaten by Tino the day before, tries to redeem himself, claiming he was caught off guard and won't lose again. Craig, already tired of all this, comments that Tino is level 4, just like Gilbert. Tino, full of confidence, throws her weapons on the ground, asserting that there's no way she can lose to someone like him. Ruta and Greg start to worry. After all, even though Tino is stronger, fighting without weapons is an unnecessary risk. Normally, Tino would have the advantage, as despite being at the same level, she earned all her levels in solo missions and has plenty of experience in human combat. But Gilbert possesses the Eternal Flame Sword, which could turn the tide if he knew how to use it properly. In a foolish gesture of pride, Gilbert also throws his sword to the ground, determined to fight on equal terms. Now, Tino is sure she will win and even makes plans to get ice cream with Craig afterward. When the fight begins, Tino charges forward and lands a punch on Gilbert's face. He tries to dodge, but ends up taking a kick. He is knocked back, just like the day before. The fight seems over, but to his surprise, Gilbert gets up and continues. He doesn't make much progress and soon gets pinned down, but at least he shows determination. Eventually, he breaks free from Tino's hold but is knocked down again with a blow to the back of his neck. This time, he won't get up. Tino celebrates and thanks Craig for helping her become so strong, even though Craig has never done anything to train her. Greg and Ruta are astonished by Tino's strength, while Gilbert refuses to accept the reality that someone is stronger than him. Since the day he first picked up a sword, Gilbert knew he was destined to be a hunter. He always surpassed professional swordsmen, and when he finally registered, he formed a group and started exploring dungeons. Until now, he had never tasted defeat. Tino, despite not liking him much, acknowledges Gilbert's skill and encourages him to pick up his sword. But Gilbert's pride speaks louder, and he refuses. Tino is disappointed because she knows this kind of pride can get someone killed. Deep down, Gilbert knows she's right. At that moment, Craig calls out to Gilbert and guesses that he must have left his old group due to the strength difference. Gilbert is shocked because Craig hit the nail on the head. Craig mentions that he went through something similar with his group, even though he never left, even if he might have wanted to. Gilbert takes this to mean that Craig is much stronger than everyone else in the Soul Lamenting group, giving him a new perspective on what it means to be the strongest. Craig then notices Gilbert's sword and lightly touches it. Suddenly, the sword unleashes enormous flames, far greater than anything Gilbert has ever achieved. And Craig didn't even need to hold the sword by the hilt. In this world, there is a substance called mana, which is invisible but condenses into various physical forms within treasure chests. The wolf den is one of these chests, and it is said that ghostly wolves appear there, covered in blood. Craig is quite happy to have sent the others there and not have to go himself. Eva questions whether it was a good idea to send inexperienced hunters, but Craig believes the group will manage, since the den is only level 3, and the 4 of them are quite skilled. Additionally, Craig wanted to thank Eva for the information she provided about Gilbert. It was hilarious to see his face when Craig started guessing a bunch of things about the guy's past. Eva was happy to help, but soon wanted to know how Craig managed to use Gilbert's artifacts so easily. Craig explained that the artifact was quite simple to control, and even Gilbert, with all his inexperience, managed to handle it without much training. So, for him, what he did wasn't a big deal. But let's be honest, Craig loves collecting artifacts and is already thinking about asking Gilbert to sell him the sword. Eva, however, dismissed the idea right away. After all, Craig already spends a good portion of his budget on artifacts, and his collection is gigantic. It doesn't make sense to want another one. Craig argued that each artifact is unique, and even though he has over 20 rings, he can always want more. Eva realized she wasn't going to convince him, but still, she didn't want him to spend everything on artifacts. The money from the Soul Lamenting group is divided equally among the members, regardless of what each contributes. So even if Craig hardly does anything, he still gets well paid at the end of the month. Craig didn't want to give up his collection, so when he realized that one of his artifacts needed recharging, he used that as an excuse to leave the conversation. He went to a guild member, asked for help to recharge the artifact with magic, and of course, everyone was happy to help since Craig always does a lot for them. While the artifact was being recharged, a man told Craig about a cloaked ghost that appeared on the road to the north and destroyed a caravan. There were 3 level 3 hunters guarding the caravan, so the ghost must be strong. The Knights of the Third Order are recruiting an extermination group to deal with it. The report stated that the ghost was a wolf and that the location wasn't far from the White Wolf Denver. This could indicate that the wolf population was increasing, which means the den was full of enemies. Anyone who went down there would be in trouble. Craig tried to push these thoughts away and convinced himself that Tino's group was probably fine. But then people around him began to comment that the monsters in the White Wolf Den were getting much stronger, and the guild was thinking of raising the threat level. In fact, a group of level 5 spearmen had disappeared there, and Craig realized that no one below level 5 could handle that. Now, Craig really started to worry and decided to take a look at the mission he received earlier. To his surprise, he was supposed to rescue that level 5 spearman and his group. He should have read the mission details before sending Tino and the others there, but now it was too late to call them back. The people at the table noticed that Craig was acting strangely and asked if everything was okay. He then revealed that he had sent Tino to the White Wolf Denver. The horrified reactions were immediate upon learning that he sent Tino, who was only level 4, to a place where a level 5 group couldn't win. They thought Craig must have known about the danger and sent Tino as part of a training exercise. After all, what kind of irresponsible teacher would send their student on a deadly mission without researching first? Craig suddenly stood up, saying he had something urgent to resolve. As soon as he left through the corridors, he began to panic, trying to convince himself that Tino was quite skilled and might manage. Besides, Gilbert was almost as strong as her, as long as he was using his flame sword. But Craig remembered that he had used all the sword's power in the demonstration. If Gilbert didn't recharge it afterward, the sword would be practically useless. When Tino and the others were approaching the White Wolf Den, they felt a dangerous aura even before arriving. Tino had been expecting something like this. After all, it was Craig who sent her on this mission. So, she even wrote a will, just as a precaution, but she was confident she wouldn't die, believing everything had been perfectly calculated by Craig. She believed that Craig's choice of sending them on the mission was a very deliberate decision, but Greg thought that was impossible since Craig had only met them the day before. Gilbert agreed that it was unlikely, but he also wouldn't doubt that Craig could have researched them before they even met. In fact, the whole situation in the bar was probably part of his plan. So, even knowing this mission was far beyond their level, Tino was sure that Craig wouldn't send them into something without a chance of survival. Unfortunately, that's exactly what Craig did, and now he was freaking out because of it. He decided he would need to go personally to rescue them. So, he went to his secret room and started gathering all the artifacts he could carry. As he left, Eva saw him and assumed that Craig had intentionally sent Tino on that dangerous mission just to test her. Although Craig had planned everything so that she wouldn't actually be in danger, she knew he was also worried, which is why he was going to check on how they were doing. She even noticed that Craig was carrying the Shore Sludge artifact, which was technically illegal to possess under Imperial law, but he wanted to be prepared for whatever he might face. Craig then headed to the balcony and equipped a winged suit artifact, ready to reach the White Wolf Den as quickly as possible. When he left, Eva hoped he would manage to come back safely, as the last person who used that winged suit died after crashing into a wall. After a long and arduous battle, Tino and the others finally managed to bring down the wolf. Greg breathes a sigh of relief, but Tino doesn't share the sentiment. To her, the team didn't perform well. There was only one wolf, they had the numerical advantage, yet it was still a difficult fight. At this moment, Greg questions Gilbert about why he didn't use the fire sword, since it would have made things much easier. Gilbert explains that the sword is out of mana, which is strange because he was sure he recharged it a few days ago. He then realizes that the relic must have been drained by Craig's attack, and there's no way to recharge it here. At the moment, it's just an ordinary sword. Ruda suggests that maybe it would be better to head back, given that the mission has proven to be much more dangerous than expected. Greg agrees, saying that, under these conditions, it's likely that the people they came to rescue are already dead, so continuing would be pointless. But Tino is firm and makes it clear that they will stick to the plan, no matter what. Greg tries to argue that their lives are more important than a mission to recover bodies, but Tino interrupts him, explaining that this isn't a simple body retrieval. She's certain the targets are still alive inside the vault, because it was Craig who sent her, and he's never wrong. In fact, draining Gilbert's sword may have been intentional, a way to keep them from relying on relics. Convinced, the others follow the plan and continue with the mission. When they reach the wolves' den, they find that all the wolves are armed and wearing armor. Defeating such a large number will be complicated. Gilbert offers to go ahead and try to take out some of the wolves, but Tino reprimands him, saying he would be an easy target before even getting close. As the leader, she feels the weight of bringing everyone back alive. Being agile, she and Ruda will run to draw the wolves' attacks, while Greg and Gilbert attack from behind. Hopefully, the long-range weapons won't be as dangerous up close, but Tino makes it clear that no one will be sacrificed, no matter what. Meanwhile, Craig flies over the forest toward the den, hoping that Tino can survive, even if it means sacrificing the rest of the team. Fortunately, she didn't hear him say that and continues fighting alongside the others to ensure everyone's survival. They've managed to deal with the monsters thanks to cooperation, though the path is far from easy. Their biggest advantage is that the wolves don't know how to fight as a team. With more wolves approaching, Gilbert and Greg feel confident that they can take them down. Tino acknowledges that, for an improvised team, they're doing surprisingly well. She doesn't like Gilbert's attitude, but she has to admit he's a strong fighter, and Greg, with his experience, knows how to coordinate. Ruda, although not a great combatant, makes up for it by handling all the recon, allowing Tino to focus on the battle. She believes that every detail of this team was carefully planned by Craig and starts to pray to him, almost like a god. Gilbert, while fighting a wolf, recalls the last time he spoke with his old group. He had reprimanded them for not being up to the task, and they admitted that they simply couldn't keep up with him. That was when he decided to go solo. He knew his former companions were giving their best, but the gap in strength kept widening, and he couldn't stay with them any longer. Since then, he's hunted alone, but now he realizes how good it is to fight alongside someone. After they defeat the last wolf in the area, the group moves forward until they reach a large opening. They are about to enter when Tino makes them stop, sensing that there is something more inside. The others ask if it could be the hunter they came to rescue, but Tino is certain that the vault boss is ahead. Greg thinks it's too risky to face the boss and suggests retreating, but Tino points out that they got this far without any injuries. A single boss shouldn't be impossible to defeat. She tells Greg that he needs to be a bit more courageous, as always playing it safe won't make him improve. Greg admits that he's grown complacent, thinking he was good enough as a level 4 hunter. Before he even realized it, he started avoiding any sign of danger, his cowardice certainly influenced by the trauma of seeing his friends die due to useless bravery. No one would blame him for wanting a safe life, but the fact that he sought out the First Steps clan shows that he wants to grow, and Craig must have noticed that when he put him on the team. He doubts Craig thought that much before choosing him, but what other explanation could there be? Ruta asks if Craig had any special reason for choosing her too, but Tino can only say that she has great attributes. Meanwhile, Craig flies through the forest, still hoping to find Tino and the others. He expected them to flee from the vault after realizing it was more dangerous than they thought, but he hasn't located them yet and needs to keep searching. Den is now in trouble, with no way to break the wingsuit, and ends up crashing through the tunnels of the Wolves' Denver. Meanwhile, Tino and the others come across the dungeon boss, and it's much bigger than they expected. When the monster makes the first move, the group is forced to split up and run around the room to escape. Even without engaging directly, it's clear that this creature is extremely powerful, and even Tino starts to doubt if they'll be able to defeat it. At that moment, she spots a weak point on the wolf's head and remembers that Craig would never send her on a mission she couldn't complete. She can't give in to fear now. Shouting to Gilbert, she asks him to block one of the wolf's attacks while she handles the rest. Gilbert agrees, and as the wolf approaches, he moves forward to draw its attention. The moment the wolf charges at him, Gilbert blocks with his sword, thinking the monster is vulnerable. Greg takes the opportunity and rushes to cut its leg, but he is thrown away like a ragdoll. The others seem to handle the situation better, moving with more agility. Shortly after, Greg gets back up and tries to return to the fight, but his sword is broken in half, and the wolf goes for a fatal strike. Luckily, Ruta manages to pull him out of the way just in time, and the wolf's axe gets stuck in the ground. Tino takes advantage, runs up the weapon, and leaps to strike the wolf's head. Even feeling the pain from the scratch on her leg, she forces herself to continue and drives the blade into the monster's neck, which finally falls defeated. On the ground, Ruta rushes over to check on Tino, as she's badly hurt, but Tino says she'll be fine, a healing potion should do the trick. Greg, on the other hand, is frustrated for having lost his sword, but relieved to still be alive. With the boss finally defeated, the group thinks it's now just a matter of finding the missing hunters and heading back to the city. Tino hands her sword to Greg to use for the time being, but suddenly, a giant arrow flies toward her. She manages to dodge it at the last second, but quickly realizes the battle isn't over. For new bosses appear, all armed and ready to attack. If defeating one of them was already hard, Tino has no idea how to handle 4. She suggests that everyone run to a nearby narrow cave to gain some distance from the wolves. It was a good plan, but the monsters notice their intention, and one of them leaps to block the entrance. With no other options, Greg and Gilbert exchange glances and make the tough decision to stay behind and distract the wolves, giving Tino and Ruta a chance to escape. The two are the fastest, so they have the best chance of surviving. Tino is desperate for a solution and wonders what Craig would do in this situation. Suddenly, she remembers the ring he gave her, and an idea comes to mind. She shouts to the others that no one is sacrificing themselves today. She'll attack the first wolf and wants everyone to cover her. Greg and Gilbert distract the monster, while Ruta throws kunai at its eyes. Seizing the moment when it's blinded, Tino activates the shooting ring, firing a laser beam straight into the wolf's eye, leaving it permanently blind. It's the chance to attack, and Gilbert rushes in for the final blow. But even blind, the wolf senses his approach and hurls him against the wall. Tino runs to see if he's okay, and Gilbert apologizes for getting so hurt. She reassures him, saying he did nothing wrong, it was her plan that failed. With no more ideas, everything seems lost. However, before the wolf can strike again, it is slammed against the wall with impressive force. Craig appears out of nowhere, hitting the perfect spot. He's so confused he doesn't even notice the wolf trying to attack him, but thanks to one of his protective relics, he comes out unscathed. A blow like that would have been fatal, but Craig came prepared, with several protective rings. He points at the wolf and fires all his shooting rings at full power, launching a barrage that drives it away. Everyone is amazed by Craig's power, but he hadn't even planned to attack, it was pure reflex. Unfortunately, the wolf rises again. Craig expected this, as the damage from the shooting rings is low. Surrounded once more, he feels relieved for having brought so many rings, but to get out of there, he'll have to use the forbidden slime. He removes the object from his necklace and throws it in the middle of the wolves, shouting for everyone to run. Tino's leg still hurts, so she can't run at her usual speed. Craig stays behind, apparently protecting the rear, but in reality, it's just because he's slower than the others. As they run, Tino recalls the day she met Craig, when he and his group saved her from being sold into slavery. Since then, Tino has admired Craig and always sought his approval. When they finally reach a safe place, she eagerly waits for a compliment, even though they didn't defeat all the bosses. Before Craig can say anything, Ruta remarks that Tino did a great job leading, even without defeating all the bosses. Craig agrees, pointing out that he had already expected them all to be dead, so the fact that they're alive is a great achievement. Tino is happy with the recognition, but Craig soon notices the wound on her leg and uses a healing relic to treat it. Greg asks if Craig is going to fight the bosses, but he replies that it's not the best choice right now and orders everyone to follow him. He just wants to get out of that place, but has no idea where the exit is. Maybe he's just leading the group in circles. And thus ends episode 3. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the continuation.